So a caveat to literally everything on here, and I've been doing this, I don't remember how long I've been recording these things, but a caveat to literally everything I've said is this is assuming you are doing techniques in which it's not part of the technique to lean. There are kicks, knees, various things where you are supposed to lean. One example, later on, hopefully I remember to put this in the front, is what I've heard called, what my instructor has referred to as a bone kick. I will say what so-and-so is referred to or what I call, because I forget terminology a lot. I don't have a great brain. So I will make up terminology a lot because I forget names of things. But shoot, I don't even have the bag pointing. Boop. So typically when I'm throwing a kick, I'm throwing it around, right? And so I'm trying to stay up tall because my force is going this way. There are techniques where I go boom. So that, you'll see where my normal kick, I'm aiming for the sharp part of my shin coming straight around this way. So I'm here. That bone kick, I am changing that vector to downward. A lot of times you do this if someone's here and you want to kick down this way. I lean that because I want the angle of my hip to change. So I don't want the angle of my hip to be going this way if my kick is going that way, right? I want to point the point of my hip towards where I'm attacking. So I go down. When I do that, I want to change my body to where I can acclimate that. If I stay tall when I do that, it goes almost straight down through here. So I'm not going to be able to kick something here. I'm not going to be able to kick something here if I stay tall and do this because my leg wants to go straight down. But if I turn and do it, I can cut that vector. So that's caveat. There are plenty of things where you are supposed to lean. Hell, there's some knees where you're here, right? So all of this is predicated on, I want to stay tall. I don't want to lean around. And I want to stay tall and balanced on this. All right, so keeping good posture while you're kicking. I mean, so this might be fairly long because there's a lot of stuff that can go into this. And I'm probably gonna be talking about some doing like teeps, front kicks, kneeing stuff too, because all of it kind of relates to each other. But one of the first drills, and the drill that's fairly common for most people, is to be stationary. Most of the time you have a wall that you kind of hold on to, right? I can use a bag, I can do whatever. Let's say the first one is I have my foot at about 45 degrees from the support, whatever support I'm using. And how, at least my old instructor always had us do it, is we would lift our foot up, about an inch or so, whether it's, a man inch or a real inch, whatever. Hold it for a little bit, then do the other side, then lift it, and just slowly going higher and higher. And while we're here, and we're doing this, you don't want to do this to where because most of the time your body and your leg will want to counteract each other. You want to just kind of be tall, be here, be the other side, and hold whatever height you're going at. So what we used to do is the first level, and then we do like 3 levels after that. And just kind of hold it for about 10 seconds. And that's front, and then again with your foot at 45 to your support, go side, go and hold it. For this one, so you'll see that this line between my chest and my leg are staying the same. I'm not leaning. Most of the time when you start leaning, it's because you're trying to take your leg too high. Caveat, there are kicks where you are leaning, obviously. So like, for an extreme example, I can't get my leg to point straight up If I do, I probably have to go to the hospital afterwards because something went wrong. So even if I'm going for like, actually this bag's still in frame. So when I'm kicking like here, I can still keep that posture. Ooh, my hips aren't warmed up, but if I start going high, my body's gonna have to move just anatomically. Even if I had the most range of motion I could here, my body's still gonna have to offset at a certain point where I get high. But when you're doing these, you just wanna kind of stay relaxed and get it as high as you can without your body tilting. Because you're trying to kind of explore and see where that height is, where that comfortable balance height is. Again, I'm doing this just to kind of keep them framing so I can move around. I'm not using a support. Doing this against the wall is your best bet, and you can really feel whether or not you're pressuring into the wall. So that's kind of your first drill. Well, so that's sideways. The other one is so front kick, round kick. And then the last one is if I have my foot pointed at the wall, my knee pointed at the wall, and then I'm here, right, doing this kind of side kick where I'm looking at my heel as I'm here. My side kicks are terrible, so I don't have much range of motion. I can't like side kick up here without my body really turning. Other people might be able to, I can't. But it's kind of a kick I do a lot, and I'm definitely not trying to like side kick someone up here. That, for me, that would end horribly. But that's your first kind of warm-up drill, which I feel like is a real key in feeling where your range is, where your balancing range is. Because as soon as I have to start offsetting, that's where my balance stops. So I can get about here before like I feel like I need to really start moving my body to offset that motion. And it doesn't matter if this is your highest or this is your highest. It's fine, you just kind of work whatever. And you just build up, because that's the whole point of doing this shit, is to build up your skills and your movement. The next one that I like to do is what I've dubbed silly walks. And I'm already probably gonna have to move the frame. But what this is the same idea, but in a dynamic motion, and there are a lot of ways to vary this. The first one I typically have people do is swing forward and swing back. When I do this, as I swing, I pick myself up. So I'm not trying to like hop. I just need a little motion, right? And when I do this, I'm not trying to like swing and really flare my leg up. It's a relaxed motion. I'm just trying to get it to where I feel a little bit of tension, but I can still stay nice and tall. I'll probably say in the cylinder a lot, and that's what I mean by in the cylinder, is that if there's a cylinder around my body, I'm not exiting that cylinder with anything but my leg. So boom, boom, and as I do that, so my warm-up is essentially I go forward, forward, and walk down and back, just doing that. The other one, side to side. Notice I'm still lifting. A key to this one, well, let me rewind a second. One of the keys to the forward and back ones is my knee, my feet stay in this line, the same line I'm going to. I don't want this stuff or this stuff, which people will do if they feel more flexible going here, they'll start opening. And that's not what we want with this. We want to feel the range of motion forward and back. So the next one, my feet and my knee want to point at more of an angle. So I'm not straight on. You see here, my knee is pointed slightly upward. As I come back, my knee is still pointed slightly upward. So I'm kind of opening this, right? So I'm here, here. And I'm still trying to keep this good tall posture, right? So if you look behind me, I'm still being nice and tall when I'm doing this. Again, we're not trying to flare our leg up. We're nice and relaxed when we're doing this. Because I'm just trying to find where it just kind of creates a little bit of tension. Because where you start creating that tension is where your body will start to fight to move around. So that's the second. So on this one, go here, here, step forward, and I'm still lifting myself up as I go. The lifting myself up is for a few reasons. One, obviously, strengthen my calves, make sure I don't just sit on my heels a bunch. Two, when I'm throwing decent kicks, decent high round kicks, this changes when you start doing snap kicks or different types of kicks that don't necessarily need heavy pivot, but you want to be able to lift up and pivot, because if my heel drops and I try to pivot, all that tension goes to my knee, and that's not good for you. So one of the reasons we're doing this is to be able to keep this balance even when we're up on our toe, right? So that's side to side silly walk. Next one, I go forward, widen, down, step. Again, staying tall. So this one, my knee points straight, knee turns, knee point down, step. And you'll see still trying to keep that nice tall posture. I'm gonna bend my knee because this bag's in the way. Or I could just do this, I guess. So here, 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 here. And when we're doing this in motion, there's a door here. Again, trying to keep this relaxed while staying in good posture. Next one, instead of going forward to back, I go back. This one I skim my leg in, then come forward, then step. So this, if you want to know kind of what this is, there's, depending on who's teaching it and how nitpicky they are on what the names of things are, I learned this as a hook knee. And the difference between that and like a round knee is basically how your hip is in motion. Doesn't matter, we're not talking about knees right now. But, so this is setting up for a knee, right? Then I come here, this kind of front snap, down. So, the motion of lifting myself here is I lift here, I come back down, lift, come back down. After coming down here, I typically keep heel down here. Snap kicking is not something that I do a lot of. So whether or not that you want that lift as you do this, or if you want the grip while you do this, that's, I would say, personal preference, because I don't do those types of kicks very often, and when I do, I keep my heel planted. So that's the third one. So we're here, we go back, here, here. Step forward, back, here, here. Still keeping nice and tall. Those are the main silly walks for while you're kicking. I think those are kind of my big warm-ups that I do that also help people get used to keeping that balance. Because really what most of this is so wrestlers, a lot of the time, when they start getting into kickboxing, at least me and some of the wrestlers I know that have started, someone catches their kick, it's no problem just to stand here. We've done this so many times. But most of the time, if you catch somebody's kick that's new, they will immediately start to break, which ends up where someone crashes in, hurts knees, does all sorts of stuff. So essentially what all of this is learning to be on one leg while being tall and staying balanced. And that's just various ranges of motion to do that. So yeah, those are my key warm-up kind of ones. And I'll kind of go into some drilling stuff here in a second. All right, so kind of a warm-up, kind of workout. So it used to be when I was younger, right, I was really pigeon-toed for various reasons. But what I started doing, well, first, I started doing a lot of pliés and stuff like that. But something that really helped me to develop my balance is, oh man, I didn't go over my base foot very much. We'll talk about it here. So, something that helped me a lot is slow motion kicks. So what I'm gonna do, and this is for pretty much any time you're doing these balancing on one leg, is I wanna keep my knee over almost the center of my foot. When this happens, so my knee is pointed this way, and I start to lift, I'm putting force here, and then it's going into empty air. So there's a lot of stuff going in to parts of my knee, and my knee just popped. I don't have great knees, so even doing that doesn't feel great. Same thing if I have it too far out. If I have it too far out, I'm putting force on a vector that doesn't have support. So having it here, where it's all going down into something, is very important. Something that I've noticed a lot, this is kind of an aside, but a lot of the places I've been, even just various sports, we tend to tell people to keep things shoulder width apart. Because from what I can tell, we're typically in male-dominated fields, right? And especially when you're doing martial arts and stuff like that. So we tell men typically have this kind of center of balance more on our chest and our shoulders. So we're like, yeah, shoulder width apart. While when we're teaching women, a lot of the time, not always, obviously, everybody's variable. So this is, depending on who the individual is being trained. Sometimes we need to focus on, hip width apart instead of shoulder width apart, because women a lot of times get knee injuries. And part of that is if you have wider hips, right, and you're telling someone to do shoulder width apart, you're telling them to put their feet closer together, which creates an angle on their knees that can be really damaging to their knees. So if you're sitting there, it'd be like, but it's the same kind of problem. If you're creating an angle where the main force, or a lot of the force, isn't going down in a supporting angle, it's going into something that has to then be supported in a different direction. All of that, so that's a big aside to say, try to keep your structure under you. So I'm here, I'm keeping this here, right? And what I'm gonna do is be in whatever stance. I'm just gonna slowly get my leg up, turn my hip, and raise my leg. Then again, very slowly, come back into my stance. What's hard, and I still mess it up, is sometimes I'll go off my heel. Try to be on the ball of your foot as you're doing this. Really, this should be after the like silly walks and all that stuff, but I'm a terrible teacher. I do stream of consciousness. So that's slow motion kicks. Again, the important thing we're looking at is keeping that posture, right? It doesn't matter if your slow motion kicks are up here or if your slow motion kicks are down here. You're still trying to keep that posture. And the whole time, knee, middle of foot, keep that shit married. So some drills you can do. Also, apologies if I start getting sweaty and gross. This is the upstairs, and it retains that heat up here a lot. So it's very warm up here. So an easy drill you can do, easy being fairly relative, right, is if I have a bag in front of me or really anything, because I'm not actually going to put a bunch of pressure into this, you can do this on, I'll show it on a bag first, and then I'll show it on different surfaces to show how this can work if you don't have a bag or something, to have something going this way. That will actually make it easier because you have support on your balance point and not necessarily on the pivot point. So I'm gonna just stick my leg next to this, standing tall. I'm gonna pick myself up and turn, and then come back. What I'm looking to do, because most of the time, like I said before, most of the time when the body starts fighting, it's from your motion from here reaching a point to where you feel you have to offset your leg. And you can do this at any height. Right, it's just about making sure you're keeping yourself tall at the pivot point of your kick. Because when you're kicking, right, you're here, you pivot. And a lot of the times that leaning comes at that pivot point. So this is working on, shift this over. This is working on, I have this, so I have some here, and working on this pivot point and this hip extension, not causing a breakdown here. So I'm here, hip points this way, so my hip points this way, hip points that way. This maintains on top of my leg, my head, body on top of my leg, not letting my head get past my hip. Standing here, right? So I'm here, it points this way, and back. But these are different surfaces. So something that's very low to the ground. I just have this little thing I use for various stuff, but I can use this in here. Boom, boom, boom. So again, I'm just making sure, although you can't see my head, you can see where my body is. If I turn, you can see how this starts going at this angle. And as you get more comfortable, that support's off. As you get more comfortable, you can do things higher. You can use a couch, use a chair, if you have partners, so one easy way to do this is have someone just hold your leg and then have you turn. And as you get better, actually I'll just show that. I'll just show this. So that was on like a fairly low surface. You can do it on any sort of surface. So you can do it on a ring, on a bag. Just having the support underneath you tends to help kind of be able to get that motion without having to actually sit here and balance like this. Because being able to sit here for long periods of time will wear on people. But as you start to develop this, I was talking about if you have a partner, right? You'll start feeling something. So what you want to start feeling is, as I'm here, this turn helps get power into my kicks. Because my leg is just a delivery device on a typical Muay Thai roundhouse. Power is coming from your hip. Leg just delivers. It's like a punch, right? Your punch you don't punch with your hand. Your punch comes from leg, hip, shoulder. Your hand is just a delivery device. So what I want to start feeling as I get this is, as I turn, is I put something into it, right? I let my hip actually drive, and let my pivot drive my hip. So I'm creating this tension. Again, you can do this at any time. You can do the same thing, so we're going like little snaps, but it's all driving that. So I can do that because, so what this makes you feel when you start getting that driving in is whether or not you're trying to create. All right, so I'm gonna have to get into, I don't want to get into mechanics of kicks too much, but so when you're kicking, right, you're flinging your leg. If you wear skirts, it's like twirling your skirt, right? If I twirl a skirt, I'm not gonna twirl it like this, because you see how that kind of lifts this up, and it changes the angle of my hip. For people with penises, sorry for the probably inappropriate thing, but you can think of this if you don't typically wear skirts and you happen to have a penis, you're slapping your penis side to side, right? But just sit here doing this, I'm flinging my hips. I'm not turning my body when I do that, because that would start getting into helicopter territory. So my goal is to make the force of my kick be on the plane of my hip. My hip is pointed towards where that force is going. Is one of the reasons when you, to take it back to punching, when you throw a punch, when you hook, right, boom, you're here. My hip points that way, that's where my force is going. When I throw a cross, boom, hip pointed here. It's going that straight line, right? Same thing with your kick. Or if you swing a baseball bat, any sort of thing where you're trying to generate power, typically the place that your hip is pointing is where that force is going. So I want, when I throw, typically when I throw a kick, it's coming at a round vector. So you might say, well, kicks typically come up and then turn, right? But that's just a vector change. So the vector where the force actually is generated typically is in the center going this way. And if that's getting too in the weeds, ignore it. But what I'm trying to do is make it to where the angle of my kick, right, is going here. I'm generating force going this way. One of the reasons that posture is important is because I'm taking that going this way. If I do this, that immediately changes the angle at which my leg generates the most power. An easy kind of way to demonstrate this is in the opposite direction. So when you're first kind of kicking stuff, you won't be able to get very high. So you'll typically kick down here. So if I'm throwing my left kick, I'm left-handed, I like my left kick a lot. I can throw a decent kick there, but I'm kicking at this angle. What I was just saying is that the closer this gets to this turning angle, the better that force will carry, right? But let's say I still want to kick low. I don't always want to kick to the, I kind of do always want to kick the body, but you're not always going to kick to the body. But you'll see the difference in the force from when I'm here, right, and I have that angle. That's decent force. But if I get down there, so I'm sinking myself while still keeping posture and getting here, that angle matches much better than this angle. That's a long aside to say why we're trying to get this and keep posture. Because what happens is this is the same as if I was up here, but this, because you see how the angle of my hip and my body change. And now this is the angle that my leg would be at to be more or less the most optimal. instead of where I'm kicking. See how I'm almost straight across here? And that is where I typically generate the most power for the end of the kick. The beginning of the kick changes depending, and I know some people that do Muay Thai will probably say, well, I'm kicking too wide with my left kick. I have reasons why I do that, cost-benefit analysis. I'm not going to get into that stuff. But that kind of twist here, that's why we're trying to keep posture there. And that's why it's important when we're doing this to see, okay, you know, first we're doing stuff where we're just moving. We're seeing where we can keep our posture as we move around, both in a static and dynamic range, right? And then we go, all right, let's cut out a bunch of the kick. Can I keep posture here? Just standing here while someone has my leg. I can keep posture here. Can I keep posture when I just turn? Okay, I'm keeping posture there. Now can I keep posture as I drive? And all of that is just building on top of each other to try to make it to where you can keep that balance. Kind of the next step of that is just being on one leg and starting here and making sure you can generate force. Keeping posture and not relying on this hop. Because another thing people do when they kick is you look up. If you're in Chai the TBA, if you've ever been to one of his seminars, say, pick yourself up, so pick yourself up. He's talking about being here, right? So when I'm doing, a lot of times when people pick themselves up, they lean back. Reasoning is, there's a ton of reasons why people may do that. Could be they feel like they need to get out of their own way as their legs and hips are coming up. Could be, again, a balance thing, because as you fling your leg up, makes you even more feel like you need to offset that. But that shooting off that rear leg, a lot of times will make people lean. So we cut that out, and just lift with this leg. And we can still generate a little something on it, right? While still maintaining not doing this. Because again, as soon as I start doing that, how my kick hits changes a lot. So over here, pick up. So you can see, so I'll do with this leg. So leg off the ground, here. Still getting all this while staying nice and tall. Now those are trying to get kind of more difficult, which it will be hard. I expect it to be hard. And something you can do to build up to that is, I probably should have had this at the beginning. Actually, I'm gonna cheat and not do this in chronological order. All right, so now let's actually kind of talk about some of the kicking and keeping tall while you're kicking. I may have referred to at some point in some parts of this as staying in a cylinder. And what I mean by that is, first I'm gonna have you look here, right? As I turn for the kick, you're not gonna see me doing this. If I was a responsible video maker, I would put lines on my shoulders and show I'm not, coming here. I might move a little bit, but I'm not going way out of the cylinder. So in your mind's eye, act like I have lines and I was responsible. Well, here, I'm keeping inside of this. The only thing that exits is that kicking leg. The only thing that exits. My arm also comes out. So seeing it this way, so now I have this cylinder here. So the cylinder is my shoulders. If I do a little twirl, right? So as I'm here, boom, I'm keeping inside of this. What I tell people a lot when I'm having them do this is to be proud of it and say it with your chest, right? Coming out here. So if you're proud of something, say it with your chest. You're not going to be going like that. Man, some people do. Don't. Analogies break down. So, boom. So I'm staying inside of that cylinder except these two things. If you are doing this with a partner or students, what you can do, and what I do with my students a lot, is go, don't touch me. If this is my student, I will just stand here as they're kicking something over here, tell them not to touch me. Sometimes I'll have my arms out, sometimes I'll stick a leg out, say, don't touch me. And have them try to throw the technique without touching me. You can also, if you're doing it kind of by yourself, doing the slow motion kicks and everything, is have something behind you. So if I'm here, and I throw this, I shouldn't hit this. So I start here, boom. I'm still able to do it without coming back. You can't see the bag over here, but if I'm hitting that, or if I'm keeping it, I'm not running into this. You can get a little bit closer, maybe back to me a little bit. I'm not running back into this. Having some sort of reinforcement is really helpful when you're doing these things. A lot of the warm-ups and stuff like that don't have reinforcements, but they don't really need to have reinforcements because that's just getting a feel of something. When you start trying to throw the technique, all of that warm-up typically tends to go out the window when you don't get some sort of reinforcement to help it, in my opinion. Everybody's different. I've coached people that I could show them something, 15 seconds later they have it. I've coached people that take a year to learn the most basic footwork. Both of those are fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with either one of those. People are different. People learn at different rates. Some people will get one thing very quickly, another thing very quickly. I rant a lot, I'm sorry. This isn't important. So that reinforcement is keeping something at your back while you're trying to throw the technique and staying in that cylinder. Whether I'm staying in the cylinder this way and making sure I can go out of it, or I'm coming this way, making sure I'm not touching that, right? Or if I'm here, I'm popping. And all of those kind of, you can just play around with those in different ways, in different areas, and trying to make sure you're not in that lean back. Yeah. So we're gonna also go over teep, doing posture with your teep, because it's something that is very much related. All these things are related, like doing knees, side kicks, teeps, front kicks, whatever. All of this posture and keeping yourself balanced is all related to each other. So with a teep, so a teep is essentially a spear, right? And we call it a foot jab a lot, which is what it is, but the idea behind it is a spear. And so if I have a spear, I'm not going to take a spear and go, right? You can if you're just kind of poking, but that's not really going to give you as much as here, right? For doing that. Same thing if say fencing, right? And if I fence and I do this, it's going to cut off a lot of what I can do compared to when I'm here. So when we teep, I don't want to lean back as I teep. Because again, if we're talking about, like I was talking about in the round kick, the angle of my hip is important. So I'm here, I'm pointing my hip, boom, popping it forward. Same thing if I'm throwing that knee. All that's coming forward. If you look, now a lot of the time it's going to look like I'm leaning back. But if you look at the relationship between my head and my foot, I'm not leaning back, my hip is moving forward. Same thing on the teep, right? When I'm here, and I'm teeping, my head's not going back. My head is here as I teep. Now, depending on who you're talking to, they might say to keep your heel down on your teep, lift yourself up on your teep, pivot on your teep, whatever, I don't care. Do what you want to do, it feels comfortable. I typically have my heel down because a lot of the time when I trained, I was 140 pounds, training against people that are like 200 some odd, and if I lifted my hip up, I would just essentially be jumping off somebody instead of teeping. So my habit is to grab the ground with my foot as I teep. So I just kind of pop, right, as it's coming in. Notice that I'm staying right here, staying nice and tall as I come up here, just kind of popping it forward. As I pop it forward, I'm not letting that happen because that's pulling me away from that pressure. Because when we're teeping somebody coming in, right? A lot of the time. And if you're moving back, you're trying to push someone forward, most of the time you're probably going to fall back instead of actually get to where you stop their momentum. You should be able to stand here and juggle a bag, right? And be able to stay just right here, pop, pop, pop. But if I lean back, one, I'm going to start getting pushed back. Two, that motion is going to make all of this take longer. So, same idea if I'm just doing, boom, right here, right? If I move back, you might be able to get more. Again, I don't do snap kicks a lot, but when I do them, I typically pop. I'm here. I stay right here, so right after I do it, I'm ready. I don't have to come back to it, right? So whether or not you're teeping, kneeing, kicking, or staying up tall, let me make a caveat thing. All right, so I'm pretty sure I've been doing this for like an hour and a half or an hour, and it's getting close to bedtime. So I'm going to go through some of the key points on staying balanced and the rotation on your kick, on how I typically teach Muay Thai ground kick. I think I mentioned earlier something about my kicks going wider than a lot of people would prefer. I know this, I know why I do it. I'm not really going to get into why I do it. If you want to know, you can ask me, and I can explain. But it's mainly a southpaw thing, a left-handed thing, not liberation martial arts. So anyway, but we've talked about keeping knee and foot, knee, center foot married, right? The whole time I'm pivoting here. While I'm doing this, I'm creating a tension in my hips. So as I'm generating this, some people call this a cheat step. So we'll step forward and turn out, right? That generates a tension here. I think about, I'm going to lift up here. A lot of the time, how probably the majority of you would be taught to kick is, and typically I'm not going to say the most correct way because it's not fucking the correct way, is whatever works, right? But typically your leg comes kind of up, and then as it gets to the point you're about to kick, you turn it over. So you go up. You can do that a lot of different ways. You can actually do it with a knee, kick more forward. A lot of variations on that. Those I don't really care about. But the thing I want to think about is when I'm doing this, in this pivot being key, because I should actually talk about it. So this pivot is very, very important when you're throwing your hip into kicks. Not necessarily important when I'm doing this stuff, because I'm not generating my whole body into a twisting motion. When I'm throwing this roundhouse, this pivot has to happen. You do not want to drop your heel on the ground. Notice that's why I kind of emphasize keeping that heel up a lot. Because if my heel hits, this rotation stops. And I talked about keeping that heel or the knee and the foot married. What will happen is as I turn and let my hip turn, that tension and torque is going into my knee. And that will end very poorly. Well, it'll either end very poorly or all of your kicks will be here and your hip will be back here. Which again, talking about when we need to make a decision, that's not a wrong kick. But you need to be able to decide, is that the kick you want, or are you going for full hip roundhouse? So I need this foot up and being able to turn, right? So from here, create that tension, lift up, shoot my hip. A lot of the time, this will be like we talked about earlier, the shooting up is where people will start getting here. We need to make sure we're shooting up and our hip is going forward, our body isn't going back. You should be flexing your butt here. Boom. So I'm flexing my butt going forward. I'm not flexing my lower back to bend. This is going to get kind of excessive minutiae of things that I typically like to think about as I'm kicking. The keys are hip, foot. Your hands, typically you want either hand here, here, here. All that depends on who's telling you. Same thing with this hand. Some people, arm will go all the way back, some will go here. I like to teach this right here because this is safer. So my shoulder's up. This hand can be on the head or looking at a shoulder, but I can, if I'm here, I can keep them out. I can go straight into a long guard, or I can catch a shoulder if a round shot's coming, right? I can try to post on a shoulder so that that shot doesn't have as much power. This typically generates more power, but it's less safe. So trade-offs, right? So if I'm kicking with this leg, what I like to think about with this hand is I'm yanking something back. So my shoulder, I want to try to pull my hip up. As this is shooting up, I'm going to pull my hip up. So I talk about when I say sailor's chest, right? I'm here. So that's pulling up. Still, I'm not leaning back. It's creating rotation. And then my shoulder blade, I try to make it touch my butt cheek as it's flexing, which turns off into that stuff, right? So it's tension here, this kind of jerking back, right? So boom, we're here. So all of that, this is creating tension here. This is creating tension here. So I'm generating all of this tension to pull this leg up. This leg is a limp fucking noodle. I was talking about pulling the skirt. This is just a skirt. It's just moving. Now I do want to make sure, again, this is the nitty-gritty of kicks. So if you feel on this part of your leg, this is soft. This part of your shin, this is a wide part of your shin. If you look at a lot of people that break their legs when they kick, they tend to have their toes pointed straight up, and that hits this wide part of your shin. As if you think of like a thing of wood, look at karate hitting and breaking wood, right? They don't typically break the thin, long part, right? They break the wide part because it's much easier. So you want to have slight angle to where this nice sharp part of your shin digs. So you'll see as I kick, the bag will kind of bend around my leg. And that's from hitting with that nice sharp part. Over here is soft. You never want to hit somebody with something. I mean, maybe you want to hit somebody with something soft. But most of the time we train to like not hit somebody with soft bits. So as you kick, the only job this leg has, the muscles in this leg, is to make sure I'm hitting with the sharp part of the shin. I'm not flexing here. Your quad has an insertion on your hip. So as soon as this flexes, hip flexes. So this is limp noodle. This creating that. Right. I am creating the tension and turning. Different angles. I probably wandered around a lot on thoughts. I'm gonna try to splice this together tonight, share it.